you'll hear a lot of different things from a lot of different authors about where they get their ideas. I think something that every writer is told at some point in their life is write what you know. Here's the thing, if we all wrote exclusively about what we know, what we experience every day, what's in our lives only, our books would be very limited. And that's something that certainly we all bring ourselves into our books. There are parts of me in every one of my characters, even the villains. But to me, write what you know is write what you care about, write what you're interested in. Because to write a novel, you have to have that inspiration, that idea, and that enthusiasm. So that's where the idea comes from. It's things that you care about, things that you're really interested in. Revision is really a crucial part of the process for me, and it's one of the most fun parts too, because it's where I trim, it's where I weed out the unnecessary parts of the story. It's where the story changes and where a story finds its focus. I know revision is really hard for a lot of people, and particularly for students. And believe me, every time that I write a novel, I always hope that that first draft will be perfect and good enough to be the one I can send to my editor. But that never happens. That's never the case. Revision is a time that allows you to go back and have a second chance. And for me, that's incredibly liberating. The second book was really fun to write. So, Drest is running for her life in this book. And the first, she's looking for her family to rescue them. And this one, it's about really taking care of herself. All right. So this is where she grew up. There's no way on or off except this cliff that no one can climb. But she managed to get down by a rope that her brothers, the twins, had left there. Great stone slabs stretched everywhere, forming a rocky landscape of gullies and hills, the sea a brimming mass of grey-green beyond. To all eyes, it was but a rock for seabirds and seals, nothing else. It was the core of the headland's defence. A brilliant defence! Goblin's voice rang out in her mind. No one will see you here, lass. It's perfect, just perfect. And yet, now that she was there, it looked different somehow. That wide open sea beyond the stones was not a barrier, but a path on which enemy ships could travel. The cliff that no one could climb would keep her in as well if the rope were gone. The paths were bare, without protection, and anyone standing on them would be obvious from the sea. As she stood on the edge of the stone path, the wind whipping against her face and tunic, Drest remembered how the wind had felt on the road leading up to Faintree Castle. A wind above cliffs and a road with a massive stone fortress at its end. The headland feels wrong. Has your mind turned into a rotten turnip? Ewan's voice. How can it feel wrong? Because this is where it began, Wulfric's solemn voice. It's where Da and the rest of us were captured. It's not safe for you here, lass. Go back. Drest shook her head. It had been safe until that day. Surely it was safe now. She began marching up toward the lookout point. The wind turned cold. Nay, lass, it's not safe. Thorkill, nervous as he'd rarely been. Go and fetch some smoked fish, then go back to your friends. Do it quick and leave. With a shiver, Drest pivoted, but not before she caught the glimpse of a movement past the curve on the path toward the lookout point. And in seconds he was before her, a craggy old knight in a tree-emblazoned surcoat that flapped in the wind, staring down at her with pale blue eyes like Emmerich's. She'd seen that face once before, at the top of the battlements of Faintree Castle's inner curtain wall. She would have known that face anywhere. Sir Oswin. Drest stumbled back, nearly tripping on a loose clump of gorse. Crossbows! Bellowed Sir Oswin. She bolted down the nearest bank into the ravine. With a shower of pebbles and dirt in her wake, Drest reached the bottom and sprinted toward the cliff. Someone shouted in the distance. Soil and stones crashed as castle men rushed into the ravine after her. Drest wove between trees, focusing only on her speed and her direction, trying to remember where on the cliff the rope was waiting. This was the most important race of her life. She all but flew. At last, the cliff rose ahead, and the rope, there it was, dangling pale against the stone not far away. Drest ran at the cliff and jumped, praying she would reach the rope's fraying end. Her fingers closed around the tip. With a grunt, her boots slipping against the slick rock, her arms straining, she pulled herself up, hand over hand, until her boots caught the rope at the end. "Halt!" cried a thin, cold voice from below, coming near. Sir Oswyn's. How had he caught up so quickly? "That old man is fast," mused Gobbin. "Climb, lass, climb," Nutkin's voice. She gritted her teeth and pulled herself higher, her sword in its scabbard thumping against her leg, her boots steadying her, though her arms alone carried her weight. "Should I shoot, sir?" came a younger voice. "Stay ready, Ewart. You there, halt and tell me where you've put my nephew's body." "He's pretending for the bowman that you killed the lord," murmured Gobbin's voice, "but he's asking you where you're hiding him." "Halt at once! We've a crossbow trained on your back, and you've a price on your head." Drest quailed, but did not stop climbing. If that bowman let loose a bolt— "God's blood," said the younger voice. "Look at her go." "Now!" Sir Oswyn. There was a familiar muted thump, a crossbow firing. Drest flung her body to the left, still clinging to the rope. A bolt slammed against the rock face inches from her hand. It hovered there, then fell. Had she not swung away, that iron tip would have plunged between her shoulders. "Are you listening?" roared Sir Oswyn. "Climb down, and I will spare your life." "God's bones, she's going to fall," said the younger voice. "God's bones, Drest, keep climbing," Emmerich's voice. Drest lunged for a new hold. She hauled herself up, hand over hand. Her mind was numb, but her instinct was alive again and forcing her on. "Load your weapon." A scrape, a fumble. "Faster, Ewart. If this beast will not tell us where she's hidden my nephew, she shall die. Halt, villain. Do you hear me? Halt, or my man will shoot, and he'll not miss this time." There was too much cliff. The bowman would shoot again before she reached the top. Thorkill's voice came into her mind, tense, as if he were beside her. "You have 5 seconds, lass. It takes me 5 seconds to load a crossbow. Do you remember? 5 seconds to put my boot in the stirrup and pull back the string." Hand over hand, a relentless rhythm. "He's putting the string on hold, Thorkill. He's setting in the bolt." "Drest, try a drop and grab," Nutkin's voice, pleading. "Remember how I taught you that when we were climbing rope?" "Now!" Another muted thump. Drest released the rope, ducking as she did so, and grabbed the rough fibres again, a foot below where she had held them before. "Nicely done," Nutkin called. The bolt slammed into the cliff directly beside the rope, spraying bits of stone. "My God," said the lighter voice. "How did she do that?" 5 seconds to load, Thorkill's voice. "Hurry, lass." She hauled herself up, passing her former hold, hand over hand as fast as she had ever climbed. And then she was at the swath of moss. The rough part that led to the top was above it. Drest dug her feet into the moss and propelled herself up, even faster now. The rock changed. It was weathered stone at last, pitted with cracks and ledges. "Now!" cried Sir Oswyn. The muted thump. Her boot caught a ledge at once, and her fingers found grips. Dressed sprang to the side, off the rope entirely, and clung to the rough rock face. The bolt crashed against the stone beside her, into the rope, cutting it. Both bolt and rope fell, one after the other. Dressed reached for the crack above her head. 5 seconds. Dressed, you climb like a spider, Nutkin's voice. 4 seconds. Come on, you rabbit-headed. Climb, Ewan's voice. 3 seconds. Never falter before yourself or your enemy, Wulfric's voice. 2. Dressed, come back to me, Emmerich's voice. 1. She was at the top, her fingers pressing into the dirt, and dead leaves mounded on the rocky edge. She hauled herself up and rolled toward the trees. Thump. The bolt thudded against the cliff at the brink, spraying dirt, and fell back. Dressed sprang to her feet and did not give the bowman a chance for another shot. She plunged into the woods. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little taste of my work. Happy reading.